Most men believe that speaking their mind with raw emotion makes them authentic. They think unleashing anger proves they're not weak. They're wrong. Every time you react with visible frustration, you hand your power to whoever provoked you. You become predictable, controllable, easily dismissed. The average man defends his ego loudly because he has no internal fortress. He mistakes volume for strength. He confuses reaction for presence. But the disciplined man understands something deeper. He knows that wisdom isn't found in the heat of emotional discharge, but in the calculated restraint that follows provocation. When someone insults you and you explode, you've lost. When someone challenges you and you respond with frantic justification, you've revealed your fragility. The Stoics mastered a different path entirely. They understood that true dominance is quiet. Real authority doesn't announce itself through rage or defense. It speaks through measured words that carry weight precisely because they're delivered without desperation. Today, you'll learn 5 phrases rooted in ancient Stoic philosophy that transform confrontation into composure. These aren't tricks. They're weapons of psychological sovereignty. They make you sound wise when others expect anger. They position you above the chaos while lesser men drown in it. This is how you reclaim conversational power. The Stoics built their entire philosophy on one unshakable principle: the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught that some things are within our power and some things are not. What other people say, think, or do sits firmly outside your control. Your judgment, your response, your internal state remains entirely within it. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote in his personal meditations that the universe is change, and life is what our thoughts make it. He wasn't speaking poetically. He meant that external events hold no inherent power over your peace until you grant them permission through your reaction. Seneca took this further. He observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most men are enslaved not by what happens to them, but by their interpretation of what happens. When someone criticizes you, insults you, or tries to provoke you, the words themselves are neutral vibrations in air. They become weapons only when you internalize them as attacks worth defending against. This is why the Stoic doesn't react reflexively. He pauses. He observes his own mind. He asks whether this external stimulus deserves to disturb his internal kingdom. The answer is almost always no. What we're discussing today transcends communication tactics. This is about internal sovereignty. When you master your responses, you master your life. When you control your words under pressure, you signal to everyone watching that you operate from a position of unshakable strength. Emotional volatility reveals internal weakness. Calm precision reveals philosophical depth. Choose your identity carefully. Phrase 1. I understand why you'd see it that way. The average man, when challenged or contradicted, immediately defends his position. He argues, he justifies. He needs you to agree with him because your disagreement feels like a threat to his reality. This reveals something critical. His sense of truth is fragile, dependent on external validation. When you say, I understand why you'd see it that way, you're doing something psychologically powerful. You're acknowledging the other person's perspective without submitting to it. You're not agreeing. You're not disagreeing. You're standing above the binary conflict entirely. This phrase disarms defensiveness because it contains no attack. It validates the person's right to their viewpoint while implicitly maintaining your own. Socially, it positions you as the mature presence in the conversation. You become the man who doesn't need everyone to think like him. Psychologically, it protects your peace because you're not investing energy in changing minds that don't want to change. The Stoic understands that others' opinions exist in their control, not yours. By releasing the need to convince, you conserve power. You sound wise because you're demonstrating epistemic humility without weakness. You're showing that your confidence doesn't require their agreement. Phrase 2. That's one possibility. When someone makes an accusation, assumption, or prediction about you, the reactive man scrambles to correct them. He explains why they're wrong. He lists evidence. He seeks vindication. This is exhausting and ineffective. It makes you look guilty even when you're not. When you respond with, "That's one possibility," you refuse to enter their frame of judgment. You're neither confirming nor denying. You're acknowledging their statement as one interpretation among infinite interpretations, none of which define your reality. This phrase is devastating because it reveals indifference to their narrative. You're not threatened by their version of events because you know your truth doesn't require their belief. Socially, this makes you appear mysterious and self-assured. People respect men who don't desperately chase approval or correction. Psychologically, it liberates you from the tyranny of others' perceptions. The Stoic knows that what people think about you is their business, not yours. Their assumptions live in their minds, which you don't control. By saying, "That's one possibility," you're drawing a boundary. You're saying, "Your interpretation exists over there, in your domain, and I'm perfectly content letting it remain there." This is power through detachment. Phrase 3. I'll consider that. Average men feel compelled to respond immediately to every suggestion, criticism, or piece of advice. They either accept it to please others or reject it to protect their ego. Both reactions are forms of weakness, because both are driven by external pressure rather than internal discernment. When you say, "I'll consider that," you're claiming temporal sovereignty. You're refusing to be rushed into a reaction. You're acknowledging the input without committing to action or agreement. This phrase buys you space to actually think rather than react. Socially, it signals maturity and thoughtfulness. You become the man who doesn't jump at stimuli like a trained animal. Psychologically, it reinforces your autonomy. You decide what enters your mind and what gets rejected. The Stoic practices delayed judgment because immediate reactions are usually emotional, not rational. By considering rather than reacting, you filter input through your principles. Most criticism is projection. Most advice is self-serving. Most suggestions come from people who don't understand your context. You're not obligated to adopt any of it, but you're also not threatened by hearing it. "I'll consider that" is the verbal equivalent of catching a punch mid-air and examining it before deciding whether to throw it back. It's calm dominance in linguistic form. Phrase 4. What would you like me to do with that information? This phrase is surgical. It's used when someone shares criticism, gossip, or negativity, clearly designed to provoke you. The reactive man defends himself, explains himself, or attacks back. He takes the bait. The Stoic doesn't. When you ask, "What would you like me to do with that information?" you're exposing the emptiness behind their provocation. You're forcing them to articulate their actual intent, which is usually just to disturb your peace. Most people don't have an answer because they weren't thinking beyond the emotional discharge. Socially, this makes you appear composed and impossible to manipulate. You're not playing their game. Psychologically, it flips the power dynamic. They came to shake you, and now they're the ones uncomfortable, scrambling to justify their words. The Stoic understands that unsolicited negativity is almost never about you. It's about the speaker's need to regulate their own emotions by dumping them onto someone else. By asking this question calmly, you're refusing to be their emotional landfill. You're maintaining your boundaries without aggression. This phrase doesn't insult them. It simply holds up a mirror and asks them to look at what they're actually doing. Most can't handle that reflection. Phrase 5. I'm not interested in debating this. Endless arguments drain your energy and accomplish nothing. The average man feels obligated to engage every challenge to his worldview. He thinks silence equals defeat. He's wrong. Silence is often victory because it means you're not wasting resources on battles that don't matter. When you say, "I'm not interested in debating this," you're exercising choice. You're deciding that this topic, this person, this moment doesn't warrant your intellectual energy. Socially, this can be interpreted as arrogance by insecure people, and that's fine. You're not managing their feelings. Psychologically, it reinforces your agency. You don't debate on demand like a performing seal. You engage when it serves your growth, your values, or your relationships. The Stoic recognizes that most debates are ego battles disguised as intellectual exchange. Two people trying to prove they're right, neither actually listening. There's no wisdom in that. By declining to participate, you're protecting your mental clarity. This phrase isn't rude when delivered calmly. It's honest. It's a boundary. It says, I value my peace more than I value winning this conversation. That's not weakness. That's hierarchy. You're above the fray. Phrase 6. Thank you for sharing your perspective. When someone criticizes you, especially publicly, the instinct is to counterattack or sulk. Both responses center their words in your emotional world. Both give them power. When you respond with, thank you for sharing your perspective, you're doing something radically different. You're treating their criticism as information, not an assault. You're grateful they revealed how they think, not because you'll change, but because you now understand them better. Socially, this response is disarming. They expected defense or offense. You gave neither. You gave gratitude. This confuses and neutralizes hostility because there's nothing to push against. Psychologically, it reinforces your position as observer, not participant, in their emotional drama. The Stoic sees criticism as data about the critic, not about himself. When someone attacks you, they're revealing their values, their insecurities, their lens. That's useful information. By thanking them, you're acknowledging the utility without accepting the emotional payload. This phrase doesn't mean you agree. It means you're mature enough to appreciate diverse viewpoints without needing to argue with them. It means you're secure enough in your identity that others' assessments don't threaten you. This is ultimate composure. Every argument you avoid is energy you preserve. Every reaction you withhold is power you retain. Think of yourself as a fortress. Most men leave the gates open, inviting every passerby to enter and wreak havoc. You're different. You choose what crosses your threshold. The Stoic doesn't fight every battle because he understands that conservation of energy is strategic dominance. Emotional volatility is expensive. Calm is efficient. When you respond with wisdom instead of anger, you're not suppressing yourself. You're expressing the highest version of yourself. You're the storm that doesn't need to announce its presence. You're the fire that burns steady, not wild. Guard your peace like your life depends on it. It does. You now have the language of power. Use it, don't perform it. Embody it. The world needs fewer reactive men and more disciplined ones. Let others shout. You'll speak with precision. Let others defend. You'll simply exist, unbothered. The question isn't whether you can do this. It's whether you will.